Guys, it's me, it's Queen Austin Haru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. So, I would like to give a shout out to Stephanie. Stephanie sent me a message today from Mexico. So, I wanted to give a shout out to our international community. Thank you for watching the show, Stephanie, and thank you for writing me. All right, guys. Someone asked me a really good question. In a video, I talked about being in love versus being emotionally attached. And the person wanted to know what is the difference between them. So, to be in love, my personal definition, is to have a mutual affection for another person. To be emotionally attached is to have feelings of emotional connection that can be positive or negative. So, an example of a positive emotional connection is a teacher's love for their students. Every teacher who teaches students, who's a good teacher, has some level of love, some level of an emotional attachment with their students. They're not in love with their students, like in a romantic sense, but they have an emotional attachment to their well being and to them moving forward as productive human beings. Now, when it comes to being emotionally attached in the negative sense, you can think of, for example, a adult who has been abused by their parent their entire life, but refuses to let go of the parent. Still holds on to them, still spends time with them, even though most of the time they're being abused, even still in the relationship. That's an unhealthy emotional attachment. Then there's being in love. So you're in love. You have this mutual affection of the romantic kind for another person. So that's the difference between the three. When you're in love, it's supposed to be healthy. So by definition, if you are in a relationship that's not healthy, you're probably not in love. You are more than likely emotionally attached, codependent, one of those kind of things. But it's not being in true love. The biggest hallmark of true love, they said, was the word mutual. It's a mutual affection. So you both feel it and you both have a healthy relationship. You don't have a perfect relationship because remember, perfection doesn't exist. But you have the kind of relationship where you talk through your problems. When you make a mistake, you own up to it. You're accountable. You're honest with your partner. And it's, again, never going to be a perfect relationship because perfection doesn't exist. So you're going to have problems, you're going to have arguments, you're going to have disagreements, but you're going to productively work through them and you're going to come out on the other side. Doesn't mean there won't be scary times. It doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes. It just means that you will deal with it in a mutually respectful kind of way because you have a healthy relationship. That's what people do in a healthy relationship. But in a emotional attachment, a negative emotional attachment especially, you're going to have the exact opposite of that. The two people may be attached to each other. They may even have very intense emotions, very intense emotional attachment, lots of sex, passion even. But you can tell that they're not really in love because they don't treat each other with a mutual affection. They don't treat each other the way that you would treat somebody that you have affection for. They yell at each other, they fight each other, they bust out each other's windows, they cheat on each other, they lie to each other, they're treacherous towards each other, and at the end of the day they still come together in some kind of dysfunctional type situation that generally only lasts a certain amount of time. So there's a difference, like I said, between being in love and having a negative emotional attachment. But the problem is that most people who have an emotional attachment, especially a negative one, never realize that they're not really in love with the other person. And we're talking strictly in the romantic sense. They think they're in love. Even the person, some of the times, the person who's being abused thinks the other person loves them. They do. But it's just a negative emotional attachment. In love, and I'm talking again, romantically speaking, there's going to be, and remember, a mutual affection. You don't do certain things. You don't cheat on a person you have a mutual affection with. If you have a healthy relationship with somebody and something goes wrong, you deal with it in a productive manner. You don't go have an affair. You talk to the person and maybe go to therapy. You might even discontinue the relationship, but you're not going to lie to them. You're not going to sneak around on them. You're not going to cheat on them. You're going to treat them fairly. You're going to treat them with respect, and you're going to respect the relationship. And if the relationship isn't what you want anymore, you're going to walk away from it. So that's the difference between being in love and having a emotional attachment. A lot of people have emotional attachments. And the ones that are positive, like I said, with teacher and student, those are really great and they're beneficial for everybody involved. But the negative ones are the ones where you see these dysfunctional situations happening. These are the ones with these couples that end up, both of them in jail because they keep on fist fighting. You see? Those dysfunctional relationships. Everybody knows a couple that won't leave each other alone but doesn't treat each other right. And if you ask the couple, sometimes they'll even say, because I love her or because I love him. Sometimes they will say that. But my argument is that that's not love. Because if they love the person, they would have a healthy relationship and they would treat each other in a healthy, communicative kind of way. My argument is that they have a negative emotional attachment that could potentially get both of them messed up. Emotionally, physically, mentally. It could cause a lot of issues, as you see in the cases that you've probably seen in your own life. Everybody, like I said, everybody knows those couples that don't do each other right, but won't leave each other alone. And think about the things that happen. They break out each other's windows. They cheat on each other. They have outside babies. They fist fight. Some of the times it's not even that dramatic. Sometimes they're just indifferent towards each other. But they won't break up, but they just don't have much of a relationship. Don't even really do many things together. And you're always wondering to yourself, like, why do these two stay together? They have some kind of an attachment, and some kind of an emotional attachment, but they never spend any time together. They never do anything loving together. So that's the difference between the two. You can have an emotional attachment, positive or negative, with just about anybody, really. You could have an emotional attachment with your barber, which I think a lot of people do have an emotional attachment with the person that does their hair or their nails, things like that. So you do have those kind of things going on, and they're not problematic if they're not negative, if they're not abusive. But if your girlfriend cheats on you and then comes back to you and plays emotional games with you, and you have an emotional attachment to her, that's not good. That's messing with your mind. People that play mind and emotional games with you, that's not really love. You think you're in love. And if it's one-sided, that's the other part about the mutual part. If it's one-sided, it's not love either. It's either codependency or an emotional attachment. If that person is not loving you back and you're loving them, it's some other form, emotional attachment, or like I said, codependency. Usually in that case, it would be codependency. But whatever the case is, it's not truly being in love, because being in love is that mutual affection. Okay? So if you're in an emotionally attached situation, if it's positive, that's cool. If it's negative, then that's the kind of thing that you have to examine. Why are you in a negative emotional connection with any person? Any person. Parent, brother, sister, lover. Why are you in a negative emotional connection? If you have a negative emotional connection, you have to figure out why first, because that's the first step in breaking it, is finding out why it's present. And for a lot of us, it's something that fills in something else. We put that person in that hole inside of our soul. We put that person in that hole inside of our heart. But that person really isn't filling it. We're just kind of settling for that energy. The better idea is to get rid of that negative attachment and fill that hole with something more positive, something more loving, something more productive, something more healing, something that is more loving. Could be just spirituality. For me, it was goddess. I put goddess in that space because I kept on trying to put lovers in that space, and it wasn't working. It was not working at all. I was putting, different energies in that space and it just wasn't working. So I'm like, you know what? The one energy in this world, the purest love in this world is the love from spirit. So I put guidance in that space. And that's what filled the space. Before that, nothing else would satisfy it. So think about that. There's a big difference between the two. And if you're in a negative emotional attachment, you're harming yourself. So you have to really look at that and examine that and see how you can come away from harmful energy. All right, guys, I hope that helps. It's time for me to get going. So listen, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like any video on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. It means a lot to us. Also, please pass on our videos to other people. If you love this video or you like what I had to say and you know somebody else who needs to know the difference between the two, please pass them on this video. If you want a tarot or an oracle card reading, please email me. I will leave all my information underneath this video. If you would like to send me a love donation, I'll leave my PayPal. If you'd like to send me a gift, I will leave my Amazon wish list. And that's it. I'll also leave my social media information and feel free to hit me up. See you later.